I think you might then understand the utility of a mustache.
The utility.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the wrong word, but why I would have a mustache over a beard or being clean shaven.
Because it's normal but still facial hair? Or like when you say utility, is there a function it serves?
Yeah, aesthetically.
Oh, okay, aesthetically,
Yeah,
yeah.
like why you would go for a mustache over either of those two other things. Because it
Hmm.
feels like a different look than either of them. And sometimes it just frames your features differently.
It's true.
Alrighty. I think you want to go ahead and get rolling here?
Yeah, I think we've probably talked about facial hair enough.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about some literature. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first Overgrowth live stream. If you hear a cat yelling in the background, that is Mr. Jellybean. He is our photography editor. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. Myself is Maxwell. I'm the editor in chief here at Overgrowth. Overgrowth is my sort of baby, and if everybody else leaves and abandons me and throws this project under the bus and tells me I'll never make it and screams and spits, I will be the one keeping your poems and stories and all of the great stuff on this website until I am dead and buried, at which point my children will take up the mantle.
Also, Mr. Jellybean.
And Mr. Jellybean will take up the mantle. Well, I'm including him in the people who might betray me. For my introduction, and if anybody is wondering why we don't currently have a masthead up on our website, we have gained sort of a quicker following online than we expected to right off the bat, which is awesome, and we're super super happy about, and totally up and ready and willing to handle and field all of the awesome submissions that have been coming in. But at the same time, this was started in with the idea of being a local project in mind. So people in our communities who know us, that's awesome. But for the broader online community, we're kind of do first names. That's sort of our thing. Anything you want to know about us, our tastes, our philosophies, or any of that, I think is you get from what we put out and what we stand for, our stated values. Um, and yeah. So, Emily, could you let him in?
I will, because
Thank
this
you.
is something we did not count on. I'm going to turn
I
off my
thought about
camera
it.
for a sec, though.
Um, so, yeah. So that is just with the intention of privacy, basically. Um, you have probably, if you've submitted something, and if you're one of our earlier submissions, you probably received a email from one of our editors or myself by now if it's been 2 weeks. And you know that we're all real chill, good people here reading your work. I myself am a local writer, fiction, poetry, and photographer. And so I'm kind of the head of the snake, so to speak. So you will have to decapitate me if you would like to kill this entire project. These streams, I'm really excited about them. I think they'll be really fun for us. It's always nice for a community of writers and artists to have a place to go to kind of talk writing and talk art. They are going to be kind of balanced between your meat and your dessert, I guess, in the sense that there's going to be plenty of valuable, more academic discussion, but there's also going to be a lot of just kind of goofing around, chatting with each other, and things like that. We will never discuss on the stream any submissions that we've received specifically. So if anybody's ever sent us a piece that they want us to consider, we're never going to read that piece on the stream, and either talk about what we loved about it or anything. We might do that if we have accepted a piece and it's already been published in our thing, and bring it up and talk about what we liked in it. That can certainly happen, but if you're a submitter, rest easy that your submissions are completely private until the time of publication. We will maybe talk about some greater trends within submissions within what we're seeing, things that we value, if we're seeing something that's really cool happening across the board, or something across the board that people might think is interesting but is turning out to be incredibly common in a story or a poem, and is like maybe an overused metaphor or something like that, just because it's helpful for people to know that sort of thing. So that's something I might bring up, but we'll never point directly back to anybody. um, we are going to, on these streams, probably read some stuff that people would say is bad. That meaning it's not great quality. It's not. It's maybe a bit trite, or untasteful, or just generally poorly constructed. Um, we are never looking to make fun of artists. This is like a place to promote art and to, love on people who are doing their thing, in these small pockets, especially in a what I see as a very undervalued and non-lucrative space. So if we ever are talking about something that we think is not good or anything like that, we're never doing it at a person, and we're just looking to break it down for them, in terms, and you guys, in terms of what could be done better, or something like that. And everything is obviously subjective. Just because I don't like something, if an 11-year-old writes a poem, it's probably not the best poem ever, but it might be awesome for that 11-year-old for where they are at the time. And the same can be said of a 30-year-old with no experience writing poetry who decides to try their first one, right? So just because their poem might be to me, who reads and writes a lot of poetry, or same thing with a fiction piece or a photograph, bad, they're getting started, it means it's something to them. So we're very sensitive to that. And the last thing I want to mention is we've got a ton of our following's been awesome. We've gotten a really diverse following over the past few weeks since we launched our Instagram and our website. A huge LGBTQ plus following, and I just wanted to point out that that's awesome. We're a very friendly venue for that community. If you're listening to just the audio recording of me and cannot see me, I have painted nails. I have kind of hoopish earrings in, and I am 6'5" and I can dunk a basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are just two other things I wanted to throw in there. This doesn't
You
mean
didn't
any.
even mention like you didn't even mention your giant top hat that you
Come on now.
wear. All right.
Come on now. I'm dressed normal, even cool, I would say. Um,
Mhm.
all right. With no further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest here. My guest is Emily. Emily is a local mental health counselor, in Jacksonville. She is an artist in her own right, but her art is mostly visual art. So that is drawing, painting, and mostly fiber arts. So cross stitch, crochet, that sort of thing. Very gifted in this way. Uh, she has her a little local business too that she does that sort of stuff through, but I'll leave that up to her if she wants to reveal that at any point. Um, Emily is also, as if you were watching this before, you may have picked up on that we know each other well. She's also my wife. We are currently separated by a wall, but not in any other way. Um,
Yes, dropping the illusion there.
mhm. Yeah. So uh, Emily is, if you're wondering, this is really a space uh, for authors, artists. Like, I would have loved to do the Overgrowth podcast or live stream or what have you. What damn right does she have to be doing this instead of me? I've been writing, I've been reading, I've been working on my poetry, hoping for this. Emily's job is basically funding this entire project. And so, in that way, she is our dominant investor. And so, I really view her as this is like her chance to check out her
Mm.
investment, check in on everything, make sure that we're not misappropriating any funds,
Yes.
throwing
In
anything
a
in the trash.
way, I married the boss, but in another way, in a very real way, I am the boss. except for in the way that I don't read any of the submissions
Yeah, you don't read any of the submissions, do any
or
of the
make any
posts, or are
posts.
otherwise involved in any way with overgrowth.
Yeah.
But uh, in a large way, I feel like the boss because I'm much more dramatic, and if it really came down to it, I feel like I would be, you know, get my way just through sheer underhanded tactics and
Mm.
things like that.
Mhm.
So yeah,
All right. Well, we'll let the viewers decide.
yeah, we will. I might be completely wrong. Okay, I want to start out by asking you, what is your relationship to writing and literature, removed from your relationship to me?
Okay. Well, I read a lot. I'm a big reader. I enjoy being a part of book clubs, usually just with friends. I usually like to have an audiobook that I'm listening to while I'm concurrently reading a different book. I would say my relationship is mostly book related. And outside of my relationship with you, it intersects very little since poetry, or at least ever since I stopped having to read poetry in school. I've pretty much only interacted with it through you.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fairly common thing with a lot of people is that they're assigned a lot of poetry in high school or early college lit class or something like that, and then they kind of either get really into it or they drop off, and it's a pretty big drop off for a lot of people, with reading and fiction and novels and all of that in general. But I know you to be a very avid reader,
Mhm.
and go ahead.
Um, I was going to speak on my avid readingness, but I also, this might be a tech problem on my end. But as you know, I have the iPad up and on there we're frozen. So I just wanted to see if we're good.
Okay, chat, are we good?
And while we wait for that response, um, I like to read a lot of I like to read a lot of historical fiction. Um, but I like to read things that are really old historical. Like I feel like a lot of historical fiction that's popular now is very like World War II focused. I'm talking 70 AD. That is my bread and butter where I want to read historical fiction.
70 AD.
Yeah, I read a book set in 70 AD called The Dove Keepers by Alice Hoffman, and I loved it. Awesome. Thank you, Nanners. We are good. So
Thank
it's
you.
just something on my end.
Nice. Okay, cool. Um, Alrighty. Uh, it will be helpful to have Emily here as our first guest because I was thinking, I'm so in the weeds with a lot of this, with poetry, with fiction, with photography, which we won't talk as much photography on this one. But it can be really helpful to have an outside observer. So I have asked Emily to prepare some stuff that we'll get to in a minute,
Yes,
related
I'm very
to.
fresh eyes for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. So Emily, the first thing that I'd like to do is go to the people. The people um, being Reddit.
Mm.
These are a very specific sort of people, but the beautiful thing about them is that they have every kind of problem that you could maybe imagine, and they have typed it out and presented it very well for anybody in the world to read and understand. So I've kind of chosen some posts here that I thought would be uh, good for you to answer with your background. Emily works with a lot of teenagers in her mental health counseling capacity, and I found some things that I think you are uniquely equipped to help me with on Reddit
Okay.
here.
Well, I can't wait to see.
All related to the subject of poetry.
Awesome.
So later we'll get to some actual readings of some good poetry and discuss a little bit further. But I kind of want to open us up a little soft launch here. So I'm going to go ahead and move us over
Okay.
here. This first one I want to go over with you is boyfriend quote won a poetry contest. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's a little bit long. I'll get through it pretty quickly. It's a pretty simple situation that we've run into here, but unfortunate. Boyfriend, quote, won a poetry contest. My boyfriend writes poetry, and he has recently, within the past month, started to enter competitions. He's hoping to win small cash prizes or the possibility of being published. He's really quite good, but his spelling and grammar could use some work. Earlier today, he received an email, which he found in his spam folder, informing him he's going to be featured in November's issue of the Willowbrook Poetry Review and Digest. The poem he submitted was incredible, but left much to be desired in the spelling. The email goes on to advise him to pre-order his copy for $22, $30 with shipping. They have a website made by something possibly called Webble. There's very little information, but there is a place where you're able to contact or ask questions. I wrote in asking them how the poems are picked and what qualifies them, etc. Maybe 10 minutes later, my boyfriend wrote in asking something about the availability of the digest. After about an hour, my boyfriend receives a response from the digest, and she never received a response. Anyway, I'm pretty sure this is basically a scam to get people to buy the digest. And she wants to know, my boyfriend is over the moon about this and wants to order a copy or two ASAP. Do I tell him this is a scam and give him a bit of hurt, but also a reality check, or do I let him be blissfully unaware and waste a little cash? Please help. Thank you. So, before I
Mm.
get your take on this, I want to give a quick note to our readers and listeners and submitters. If anyone ever accepts your thing and then expects you to buy your own copy, I think that that's really lame. I stand pretty firmly on when our print issues come out that everybody who's contributed will get a copy. Their work is the only thing that makes it possible or a thing that can even exist. Um, and so you are perpetually indebted to those people. They should, if you make profits directly off of somebody's work, those profits should be shared with them. Not they shouldn't have to pay you for their own story back. And I think something else is, yes, this is definitely a scam, because if anybody ever immediately sends you a link to buy the thing that you've just contributed to, that is a scam. I think some of the best advice I ever got from a writing professor of mine was to never, well, first of all, he said never do research because nobody's paying you to do research. I think it's okay to Google a little bit to make sure you're not getting something wrong, but um, the second thing he said was don't pay to have your stuff out there. There are plenty of places that will field your stuff for free. That's not me just like advertising overgrowth, but like that's why we do that, because you don't make much money writing poetry and literary fiction and things like that. So you certainly don't want to lose money doing it. It is a noble pursuit, um, and I think that anybody who wants something from you for doing it should basically be told to get lost. Um, yeah, go ahead, Em.
Okay. Well, first of all, can you pull up the post again?
Yes, absolutely. Here you go.
And I kind of think that maybe you should have waited because here's what I have to say, which
Okay,
is,
I'm sorry.
can you put a price on happiness? Can you put a price on getting two magazines that are never going to come in the mail
That's
if it makes you really happy?
yeah. Um, who knows? I don't know if they print them. They might print them. You know,
Well,
they might
I
print
would be
one per
so
person who
surprised.
paid for one. Yeah,
I think that that kind of defeats the purpose of the scam
yeah.
if they were to actually send one,
That's true, because as I
because then
know
they're just doing it.
from my personal experience, um, doing printing books is not cheap. Like the actual printing itself is not cheap going through, unless these people have their own printer. And so if they're only selling it for $22 plus shipping, it's probably really low profit margins for them. And they are probably going to increase those exponentially by just not doing it at all and just keeping your money.
Yeah, I think it's a lot cheaper to say you're going to do it and not,
Yeah.
but still collect orders.
Yeah,
I think it's 100% cheaper than to actually do it.
that's fair.
Now, I think that the person that made this post is a very loving partner
I
because
agree.
I really like what they said here when they say the poem he submitted was incredible, but left much to be desired with spelling. I think
Yes,
that can only come from someone who really, really loves you.
that's so true. And it's so they're being really sweet. And
Yes.
I feel bad for him because he's very excited. He obviously loves poetry. It's very difficult to get your poetry published if you. She is so sweet. I'm
We don't
assuming
it's a
it's a
girl.
she. Yeah, I'm assuming. Yeah, I don't know, but this person is so sweet and loves their boyfriend very, very much to even make this post. I would say. Um,
Yeah.
now
I can tell this is like really tearing them up inside to like
it's
know this
hard. It's
thing
not
and feel like you
easy.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question too. Is like if you really don't think it's ever going to come and they're gonna find out eventually that they got scammed anyway, then maybe go ahead and break it to them. Maybe don't
My
even
real
mention. Yeah.
my real advice is to tell them, of
Yeah.
course, um, because I think that this is one of those things where it's like it would definitely hurt to hear, but obviously this person believes in their boyfriend. They
Yeah.
believe that they can do it. It's just I think that they fell into a scam.
Yeah. I agree with you. Um yeah, I think this is the best person to let them know and they're going to have to figure out navigating this sort of situation in the future anyway.
Hmm.
Because I would assume where there is one predator, there are many in any area.
Yeah.
So
You could do like kind of a compliment sandwich thing where it's like that poem you wrote was so, so good. I do think the website might be a scam, but I bet you could submit it somewhere
submit it somewhere
else,
else. Yeah, get
like Overgrowth.
get that spelling cleaned up and send it to us. Um, yeah, hire your partner as an editor.
Yeah. I think we solved this person's problems.
Excellent, great job. This is why we have you on. I want to take you to another conundrum. This one's a little bit long, so I'm going to distill it for you.
Okay.
Um, my this is a 16-year-old girl. Her boyfriend, who's a 17-year-old boy, used AI to write them a poem. What do I do? Now he said he wrote a poem for his for her birthday, and she was very happy. Also, the term "over the moon" is also used here. Uh, they ran it and another poem through an AI checker with their friend, and then they ran it through a bunch of AI checkers. It came back every time as 100% definitely being AI. She thinks that this is suspicious because he really has never talked about being interested in poetry and he's not that good
Uh,
at English. She says that kind of specifically, that he's like not particularly great
he's
in
not
English.
wordy.
He's
He's
not
not a
wordy.
man of the words.
He's not a bookworm. Um, uh, so this is my favorite part though. She says she decides to try and kind of see if he'll come clean about this. So she asks him, "How did you write these?" And he says verbatim. She quotes him here. She says, he goes, "I go to the balcony at 6 a.m. and watch the sunrise. Then I study a few new vocabulary, then think about the topic of my poem. I write it with simple vocabulary first, then I think about how I make it stronger and more captivating. Then rewrite it using more advanced vocabulary. But of course, before I do that, I read plenty of English poems so that I can get how they wrote it. Uh, that's an obvious lie. I don't know what to do. I'm really angry that he lied and he's acting like a hypocrite. Would it be too much if I break up with him over this? What should I do?"
Okay. So, first of all, I immediately wonder what in the poems made them think that it was AI. Because looking at the post, she was really, really happy, and it was her friend that used the AI detector. And that just makes me wonder, like, what in this poem raised the flag?
Yeah.
Yeah, bro was capping crazy because that is such a lie to say you go out on the balcony. I could be wrong,
I go out on the
but
balcony and watch the sunrise. It's so awesome. I go out on the balcony and watch the
yeah.
sunrise. I love the description of his creative process because I think anybody who probably writes poetry knows that that is the way that it did happen, but that is not the way that it typically does happen.
We got a response in the chat. His response to her sounds like AI, and that is
Oh
so true.
man, that's
He
such a
just asked
fire take.
he asked AI, "How do you come up with ideas for poems?" And this is AI would 100% say, "You go
He
to the
copied
balcony
and she
at
probably texted
sunrise."
him this question. How did you come up with your poems? And he copied and pastes it into ChatGPT and then gets this exact response back and then copies and pastes it back. She is almost dating ChatGPT.
I was gonna say we haven't considered the possibility that her boyfriend is AI.
Or that, yeah, this could be some sort of her style situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, can you blame her? If he's writing this type of poems, he's the type of bot that goes out on the
This
balcony.
is the sort of jobs that AI is taking as poet boyfriend. Because there's a real
That
poet
is a
boyfriend
huge
that's out there that would love to have a poetry appreciating girlfriend. Um,
that's a huge loss to our society.
well, I think that's really good analysis of that there post. Um, and I'm going to go ahead and move us along to one that I found
Sure.
really well um, suited for you, Emily. This post is called "I cannot understand metaphors or allegories within literature." Now,
Okay.
Emily, this is something we know a little bit, right? This isn't necessarily accusatory. This has been brought up by you to me.
This is exactly me, unfortunately.
So, I I'm gonna read kind of the ending part of it here. When I read a book or poem, everyone else seems, and this person I think is in high school or college. They're talking about in a classroom setting. When I read a book or poem, everyone else seems to pick up the metaphors or hidden meanings very easily, or at least eventually they'll figure it out on their own. I legitimately am unable to do that. To me, it's just words. I take all the words I read at face value because I cannot do it any other way. What does ice and windows symbolize in this book? I don't fucking know. Maybe it's cold out and he should shut his damn window. I can't pick up on stuff like this. And even when it's explained to me, I can't fully understand why I myself cannot explain it to another person that well. I don't understand what's wrong with me. Maybe I've been like this my whole life and didn't know I was reading books at face value until we started to dissect books in class as I got older. I was just enjoying the story and not caring about what anything quote meant. Is there something wrong with me? Is there anything I can do to fix this? Or am I stuck being metaphorically illiterate? Now, and maybe before I get your response, do you mind if I give my uh, a little spiel here on this sort of issue, or do you feel you have a strong take?
I have a, I just, you can do your spiel and I'll talk more after, but I relate so hard to this
Great.
person.
Maybe my spiel will be good for you too then. Um,
Okay.
I think that for a lot of people, I have a bit of a background in English ed. It's what I focused on in college in my undergrad, and I gained this kind of lack of appreciation for the way that a lot of things are taught, such as literary devices, metaphor and simile, and all of that. That it's almost like a secret language or a secret code that's being written into books that you have to be good at deciphering to really understand the meaning. The purpose of any metaphor or simile or kind of imagery of frost or anything like that is to be illustrative to the reader. It's not to be analyzed and compared to other things. That's maybe the job of a literary scholar who really wants to break down the way that these things work, but that's not the job of any reader. Now, if something's obviously supposed to be a metaphor for something very, very directly, then I can see your case. But I think a lot of people think, like, I don't know what this symbolizes. Like, we talked about it in class, and I don't get it. I just felt like it's frost in a window. Well, the way that literature is written, you're really supposed to get mostly the essence of a story. You're not going to get every single line of a story. If it's snowy outside, that's to create within you, you're already imagining it's snowy. You're already thinking of cold and icy and all of this. You're already feeling it. It's giving you context for when you're reading. So just because you're not directly saying, well, the snow means, bleakness and blankness or newness and starting over, like, as somebody who writes a lot, there's a lot of people who don't write thinking all of that, but they write feeling it. And so if you're kind of feeling that bleakness because it's snowy and barren, or you're in the middle of the desert, so you feel, the isolation or anything like that, the desert's already symbolizing, or at least putting the idea of isolation in your brain so that you're experiencing the story that way. You don't need to be able to label it. It's happening. It's subconscious, and it's one of the beautiful things about literature is that it's the artist's job to deliver those effects into your brain. It's not your job to look at it with a microscope and try and figure out exactly what the artist was doing. Most art is meant to leave you with a feeling or a new idea or something like that. And any great art is going to be so layered that those layers are going to have built naturally in the progress of building the piece. And they're meant to leave you with an impression, not with a very super clear idea of what every single thing in the piece meant. Does that make sense? And
Yeah,
does that give you any sort of relief there, Em?
it actually makes a lot of sense, and it does. And as you were talking about, like, you know, the example of like there's frost or there's snow, like there sure is like a book out there that like probably takes every like kind of like how people analyze dreams. And it's like, well, if there's teeth in your dream, you're stressed. So if
Yeah,
there's teeth in the poem, it's a poem about stress. Kind of like that, but like what does snow mean? What does like a flower mean? Whatever. But basically what you're saying is sometimes they're just saying those things to communicate vibes to you.
yeah,
And if you feel the vibes, it's okay if you don't know why. And that's kind of what I took away because that's the point of art is to communicate the emotions behind it, not necessarily for you to be like, oh, it's actually about this. It's like, well, how did this poem make you feel?
definitely. Vibes based literature is often the best literature in my opinion. Something that's very like carefully and intentionally constructed. Now, there is a lot of literature that you can retroactively look back at and say this feels very carefully and intentionally constructed. A lot of the time, that is just an author kind of reweaving points together and then having the tact and skill to make everything land and tie in uh, toward the end of a work, or go back and tie something in when they're writing. If
Um,
you're, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go.
If you're not writing from a place um, of that kind of feeling and that flow state and all of that, and you're writing too cerebrally, too in your head, too intentionally, you can really get a lot of very forced language, forced lines, awkward images, strange phrasing that
Hmm.
is not that fluid, and you can kind of lose your command of the page, in my opinion, and in my
Yeah.
experience.
I think too, like thinking about this idea that you're explaining, it also explains a little bit about like some of the movies that I might enjoy. Like something like, we just saw Nosferatu, highly recommend. Pure vibes in
Pure
a lot of
vibes.
ways.
Yeah,
And in a way, also Eraserhead was kind of pure vibes.
absolutely.
And I really enjoyed both of those, even though I felt like there's probably stuff over my head for like the real film people out there. But it's very effective at being a vehicle for a certain mood and vibe and atmosphere. And that gets communicated to me as someone who is like this person who has struggles, maybe identifying the actual, like, the symbolism and putting a finger on it. And it kind of is also like, and these are both good movies that I'm about to compare, but thinking about like maybe like a Christopher Nolan movie where everything is like carefully constructed together so that at the end you look back and you see like the big picture, like Prestige or like Inception, right? Where it's like it builds and builds upon itself. And like what's impressive is the structure in a different way. What's impressive about some of these other things is like the ability to like make you feel the emotions of that world. Now, Christopher Nolan's amazing. We like him. We're a Christopher Nolan house. You just know what I mean.
Yeah, and I actually think he's a great guy to bring up as kind of what appears to be an antithesis to that sort of writing. But if you listen to Christopher Nolan kind of talk about the way that he scripts his films, like he'll talk about The Dark Knight, which he wrote with his brother, and they talk about how they were not completely aware of all of the themes that they were putting into the movie
Mm.
until later on in the project and until it came kind of to a close. It's having a good sense of where your characters are and just a strong sense of what you want to be represented maybe in a piece of art that you're doing. But at a certain point, the any sort of artistic project kind of takes on a mind of its own, and you follow your character as you follow your world that you've created. And that really famous line from it, the "you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain," that was written by his brother, and Christopher Nolan was like, I don't really know what it means. Like he like didn't really get it, and his brother was like, it's an awesome line, like it should be in the movie. Like
He's right.
and then yeah, when the script is finished and everything's finished, it's like that line is imbued with so much meaning. It's almost the thesis of the film in many ways.
Yeah.
And so he's one too that it might feel hyper constructed, but that's still a creative process where he's going off of a
Yeah,
just more driven vision of the thing than a
totally. And
written out plan for yeah.
he's of course the master at that, and so it's done really well. Off the Marsh says there's a lot of symbolism in The Sixth Sense. I missed all of it, but still enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, there probably is a lot of symbolism in The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much symbolism in every in all of his films for sure, especially Trap.
Um, wait, oh my God, I forgot that was the same guy.
Yeah,
That's
M
kind of
Night
crazy. That kind
Shyamalan.
of makes me, I want to rewatch The Sixth Sense to just kind of compare because
Yeah,
I remember it as being a very good movie.
yeah, it's definitely one of his best movies. I feel
Um,
confident saying that.
I want to talk about this post because I don't know if you know this, but I remember freshman year of high school was like the first time that I really had to analyze literature.
Okay.
And my teacher, Mr. Knight, shout out, he was awesome, um, would assign us these short stories to read, and we had to bring them back next class, like analyzed. And I had a full breakdown because I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what do you mean? Like, just like this person says, they're like, it's just words in my head. What
Yeah.
do they say? They're like, I'm reading it, I take it at face value, which unfortunately I do in a lot of ways also.
Yeah.
Um, I was like so overwhelmed by that, and my sister helped me, and she was like, Emily, you just have to highlight stuff. And I was like,
That's
so
great
basically,
advice.
anytime there was a color, I just like highlighted the whole sentence. Because it's like
hack hack
she
mode.
she tied the pink ribbon in her hair, and I'm like, eh.
That's
And then
awesome.
and I was right.
Yeah.
So I really relate to this person, and I have some news for me and this person, which is that according to one of the comments, we should talk to our teachers and parents because our teachers should be able to pick up on it and know what type of learning disability we have.
Wait, what? Oh, that's a comment on Reddit. I was like,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay. Yes, I do feel very bad for this person. They're like, what's wrong with me? Because I'm like, no, this is just a weird way of
Yeah.
teaching things about stories.
I don't know if you
Um,
noticed that someone with the flair of a phenomenal advice giver suggested,
so
so what
what
exactly do you need advice on?
yeah, awesome. They're a phenomenal advice giver. Uh,
They're 49, so
49 people have
years
tagged
old,
them.
I'm
Oh, they're just 49
assuming.
years old. Okay, I don't know.
I
I don't
guess
really go
I
on
was guessing
Reddit. All
I'm
right,
guessing that's why they're really good at giving advice.
probably so. I want to ask you. I asked you to prepare some stuff for us for today.
Yeah.
Um, so for the viewers, listeners, I asked Emily to give us one uh, poem that she thinks is not well written, one poem that she doesn't really, she's not really sure if it's a good poem or not, and then one poem that she really likes. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with the not well written poem. I believe that is the poem on Quora. Is that correct?
That is
All right,
correct.
let's go over to it and let's check it out. Okay, so
Okay.
this poem is called Narcissist Blues. And I have not read this, just to be clear. This is valuable coming from Emily because, like I said, she doesn't do this all the time. So I can convince myself anything is good or not good, just depending on like my taste or what I'm looking for or anything like that. Um, okay, Narcissist Blues. She's crazy beautiful, like my heart. Spews words so hateful, words so dark. Her love imperfect from the start. Can my love change? A broken narc. I won't give up on my soulmate from hell. Oh my god. I hide her behavior, never to tell. I clean my wounds with alcohol and drugs. I'll never betray my narcissist thug. Subtle words she used to deceive, breaking my heart, making me bleed. In the beginning, she made me believe she'd love me forever and never leave. She isolates me from family and friends. My emotional abuse starts promptly at 10. So come and meet the devil's new bride. She plays victim as Jekyll, abuser as Hyde. Damn. Her lust and greed are endless for supply. My boundaries unsafe, especially when high. When she breaks my heart, I do nothing but cry. She destroys my love with hatred and lies. Yet I crave her more and more to be her one and only whore. She abruptly turns and leaves like a hurricane across the sea. How long is this? Leaving destruction and despair. Now, how will my future fare? I'm left abandoned and confused. I'm feeling lonely and misused. Snorting lines and drinking booze. My loyal heart fought only to lose. A love like this will not again choose. I mourn your death in my heart while I sing the narcissist blues. Wow, what a ride, Emily. What a pick. And that's the one you thought was really good? Now, whenever I read a poem like this, I always give the person the benefit of the doubt that they are 15 years old. But I can clearly tell from both the image on here, which I will not show again on stream, and uh, the uh, fact that this is his wife of a long time. It sounds like,
Yes.
yeah.
He has some flair on
Uh,
this
okay.
post also. Uh, his flair reads 25-year covert narcissist abuse survivor and still together.
Whoa. Dang, that's crazy. That's still his
So they've
flair
been
despite
married
this being
25 years
posted 5 years ago, too.
and they're still together.
They're still together. Um, so Emily, what did you not like about this poem?
You know, after you read it, I pretty much liked all of it.
Nice.
Um, I think this poem actually it has some bangers in it,
The Devil's New
but
Bride. She
it is
plays victim as Jekyll, abuser as Hyde. Fireline.
that's exactly the part I'm looking
Fire.
at.
So sick.
Um, but I question the I'll never betray my narcissist thug.
Yeah. This is my real take on the poem. It is not perhaps by somebody looking for layers in their poetry. I think it
Yeah.
really wears its heart on its sleeve. I will say the metering is not terrible. Like I've read a lot of things with end rhyme on forums and just in general where
Mhm.
it's like one line is three syllables and then the next line is 10, but they both end in like some, it's like one ends in right and one ends in white or something. And then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, come on, man, you're really making me stretch and wait for that rhyme at the end of all of this. So the metering is like not as bad as some of those, mostly because each line is so short. Um, that really breaks down here at the end with I mourn your, I will not choose again. In a love like this, I will not choose again. Anyway, yeah, I will not again choose. It's like that's a little bit of forced. Like the rest of it reads like sentences, basically.
Yeah, you know, honestly, I think that it's maybe less of the poem is bad and more of the poem is a little bit crazy
Yeah.
and very like it really looks at this one thing from all angles, and it is about something very sad,
Oh
honestly.
yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
I feel bad for this person for sure.
yes, and I did read some of the comments,
Okay, should I
which
scroll down to him?
no, I can read them to you.
Okay, yeah, give it to me.
So, someone asked, did you write this from personal experience? Terrible woman. When you get over her, you can start living. The poem is very emotional and so good. And the author responds, she is my wife of 20 years and mother to our 6 children.
Dang.
So, yes, definitely personal experience.
That's a rough situation to find yourself in.
It certainly is. And
Um,
then there is one other comment I would like to read from someone who did have maybe a critique or just some discussion about it. They said, I'm confused about the death that he mourns in his heart. Is she really dead or only because she's left? I do like the poem very much. Can she heal a broken narcissist heart? A lot of meaning in this poem. And the author responds to this question about the death he mourns in his heart, and he says, I kill her off in my heart, she is dead to me.
whoa.
No contact. Period.
Wow. Dang. That's crazy. Well,
That's only confusing because they're still together.
so you should maybe hit them up and get them over to your practice and then uh,
Yeah.
fix them. Um, I let's go ahead and move on. I want to read the well-written poem here.
I would love to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this sounds really nice to read some good stuff and talk about what you
Yes.
find um, good about it, meaningful.
This is by Danny Romine Powell. I watched a video of her introducing herself because I wasn't sure how she pronounced her name.
Okay, cool. Do you wanna give this one a read, or do you want me to?
No, you should read it. Yeah, you have a good reading voice.
I appreciate that. She never thought of vegetables, never imagined she'd turn her back on flowers until she dreamed of furrows, brown and silent, creasing her sleep. She could feel her soul fold cool and green, compose itself, furling, holding its shape, unlike those humid fellowships of petals, inhaling, exhaling, their breakneck dreaming, their relentless basking, sent their only return and scant. Sent their only return and scant. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, so tell us, you
Yeah.
do you know this author?
No, I came across this poem organically and I immediately really liked it. I think it's a really soothing and comforting poem.
Yeah,
It, in a way, which I'm making this connection in my head right now, it makes me think of being like a little bunny in a burrow underground, but that's exactly what potatoes do.
that's
So
true.
in that way,
That's true.
it's kind of the same.
But I sort of have a personal hypothesis about the gray lines between plants and animals, so um, which I will not divulge now, but it is integral to my project here. Um, yeah, is there any lines that really jumped out here at UM that we can talk about?
Yeah. Well, I like I like the beginning of the poem.
Yeah,
Um, but I like she dreamed of furrows brown and silent creasing her sleep.
yeah.
I think that just sounds so lovely.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a very gentle poem. It's very eloquent. It's very simple. It's not difficult to
Mhm.
parse. It's all about feeling. Um, if we wanted to give it a scholar's eye, like we were kind of talking about, um, we could. But I think, with the submissions that we get, what I look for first, like the first thing that I look for when we get a poem submitted to Overgrowth after I read it is does it leave you with with a feeling, and then is that feeling strong, and that is what gives a poem value even if you don't understand everything going on in it, which is
Mhm.
sometimes why you read everything twice, because you could not get the feeling the first time and get it the second time, or you could get the feeling the first time and then go back and be like, okay, but what does it really mean? Like, I'm the words and the pacing and the images are giving me a strong feeling. It's well written. Um, but you don't always get on your first read what it's communicating. And that's okay. Poetry kind of has that luxury of being a little bit more abstract form of literature where it's allowed to just convey feeling in the way that fiction feels like it really has to convey a story or meaning or
Mhm.
something. Now, most poetry, probably 95% of poetry, there is meaning and intention behind the author. I'm sure there is with this poem, but I can totally see, knowing the sort of person you are, and how you love the image of mice and teacup flowers and such, that this would kind of jump out to you as something that gives that very sort of soft and natural and pleasant and relaxed feeling lingering.
Yeah, to me, this is a very gentle poem.
Yeah.
And something I also like about it is the idea, like we talk about sometimes the idea of living like a medium-paced life. And to me, that's a little bit what this poem reminds me of because in it, she's kind of talking about like the flowers and like in comparison to the vegetables, right? And the flowers are breakneck dreaming, the relentless basking. It's all very like it's outward, it's colorful, it's fun, but it's also like it's very fast, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the vegetable is a little bit more of that kind of like that hardy stock that maybe isn't as interesting, but is also very comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that that appeals to me as well in this poem.
Yeah, I love that reading of it. It's also a bit of, you know, the duality of nature being both this sort of the most graceful and pleasant and serene part of our planet, like plant life being that, and also at a very, it's alluded to as breakneck here, but that's on a, to us everything that happens in nature is very slow. But if you consider how quickly vines
So
grow in
true.
Florida in the summer and the way that some can overtake others, there's like an incredible kind of beautiful violence that happens within nature. Um, nature is, as animals are, very Darwinian in their ability to conquer certain spaces and plots of land. And so I really like anything that kind of points toward that duality in nature. And here it's the feeling that you get from the poem leaves you with that pleasant note, but it does have that juxtaposition in there, which is really pretty. Great,
Yeah.
that was lovely. Do you mind if we move on to your poem? So I asked you to pick another poem that you weren't sure if it was a good poem or not.
Yes.
Um, so I think I have it at the top of my Reddit feed here. Okay, so it was a little bit hard not to see this. Um, and we're going to go ahead and read this. I'm sorry for anybody that it's a little too small for. For the, if you're listening to this, this poem is written shaped pretty much exactly like a red wine glass with maybe some extra words scattered at the bottom, but it's totally centered for 90% of the poem, and made to look like a wine glass. And the poem is called The Problem of Writing a Poem in the Shape of a Wine Glass. Um, when I started this poem, I had it in mind its shape would resemble a glass of wine. But foolish me, for every line that I wrote, a glass of Rioja I dispatched down my throat. For a time all was fine, the world was pleasant and good, my words took shape, the poem behaved as it should. It kept its form and its line, but as I drank more, the words started to blur like they hadn't before. And that's like all jumbled letters here. And it went and got worse until the truth came to me. It seemed my poem wasn't quite as I'd hoped it would be. Some of the lines were too long, and my spelling had gone wrong, spelled wrongly, and the rhyme scheme, spelled wrongly, and shape had completely disappeared by the end of it. Emily, this poem's awesome. When I started reading it, I thought it was stupid. This is Shel Silverstein type.
That's kind of how I felt. Like I felt
Yeah.
like it was silly and
It's
fun.
silly. It's yeah, it's not what I like seek out. And like I hate
Yeah.
inversion in general. So like I really don't like when somebody says something like a glass of Rioja I'd spatch down my throat. Like anything that sounds like the way that Yoda would order a sentence. Um
The
I
way that Yoda would order a glass of wine.
this is the way that this is the way, a glass of Rioja I'd dispatch down my throat.
That's my favorite line of the poem. That was the one that actually cinched it for me,
Really?
was
Okay,
because
all right.
that made me laugh out loud.
That's awesome. Um
Um, yeah, something I like about this poem is actually it reminds me of a different poem that and I hope you know what I'm talking about. We saw, I think it might have been Fred Dale read it at Jax by Jax a few years ago, where he's writing about like trying to like impress people over each course of a meal.
oh, I don't recall that. That sounds
You
awesome.
know, I think it was Fred Dale, but it was
Okay.
like he was like talking about his golf swing over the baguettes and then like but like each time it became more ridiculous. So by the time it was dessert, he was like on the table and like making a fool of himself to the whole restaurant. But this kind of the silliness of this and its association with dinner in my head because it's wine
Yeah, this is pure
reminds me
good
of that.
fun.
Yeah.
This is it's really funny and
Yeah. I'll try to find the poem. That way, if it's not Fred, I can correct this. But I'm pretty sure it was him at that reading.
yeah. Well, speaking of Fred, we're at an hour here. I would love to tie things off on a reading, and I had one of his poems queued up.
Oh,
Um,
perfect.
so, for anybody not local, Fred Dale is a local poet here and somebody who I know well because he was the one of the premier poetry professors at the University of North Florida here in Jacksonville. He is an awesome dude and a fantastic poet, and I felt that on my first stream I would love to read a little bit of his poetry because it rocks and he rocks, and we're a Jacksonville-based publication, so trying to highlight some Jax-based writers here. So this is called Gentilly 1949. I'll note that Fred lived a long period of time in Louisiana. Um, Goodness knows the Mississippi River wants to sidestep the banquettes of New Orleans, ramble straight through the Atchafalaya Basin, scrub clean the catfish and moccasins. Jean Lafitte foresaw an approaching breach, snuffed out the smithy, and shipped off his mystique to Barataria. Said, when the barroom door closes behind you, and morning's out, stretching its back, you'll know why the river once gone. The patron of the throat, Saint Blaise, will dislodge the white children, some with only a pot to piss in, stuck in the city's neck. He said, when the pepper hot match presses against the soft part of your arm, the brain goes silent, thinks I'll not tell you about the pain that's coming, but it rises regardless to the surface. This long song of love and wrong, take the penurious boy who slipped pale from the boat of his mother. He discovered an arsenal at his fingertips. The night he moved the colored patrons only sign on the bus, and two passengers stood without question. Let this river mold its ambition. Let it unhand the church, whose idled as its brethren hung from lampposts, wind chime rosaries, praying for the air's delicate touch to sing. Let these sidewalks pull themselves free, shed their nails, turn back to riverboats. Let rot here, this crescent of water, like a smile for all that's left behind.
Wow.
That is just brilliant. I kind of want to leave everybody with that. I don't want to speak too much on it to mull over and think over. It's published for free in the Delta Poetry Review online, Gentilly 1949. Uh, beautiful piece of writing by Fred. Lots to say, leaves you with a really great feeling and linguistically superior. Um, Anyway, until next time, we'll be back on 1 p.m. on Saturday. Emily, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Um,
for having
I'm
me.
sure that you'll be a frequent guest and contributor. And as Overgrowth grows and people see more of me, they'll see more of you too. So thank you. Thanks
Thank you.
to everybody who tuned in. This was really fun. Thanks for bearing with us through some of our technical stuff and me getting my footing reading things on a computer instead of off of a page. And I'll see y'all all
I'm
on
so
Saturday.
analog normally.
Yeah. All right. Bye, y'all.